When you were on these calls and you were doing some conflict resolution, do you remember like a particularly memorable call that, was really challenging, but you got to a good outcome? And can you share a little bit about how that went down?
Yeah, there was one call, it was during phone banking. There's a woman who was just really set on Joe Biden. And, she was actually quite antagonistic towards the end because she saw him as a threat at the time. And, I just really listened to her, and a couple of things rang dear to me where she was dead set on Joe. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to I respect your decision. I'm not going to try to make you wrong for your choice. And I was able to connect with her because she said something about being frustrated with her family because some of her family are Trump supporters. And that really hit home to me too, because my parents voted for Trump and my sister had cut contact with him, and it had been like 2 or 3 years since they, were on terrible terms because of that. And so I shared that with her, and I shared with her that today all my family is Yang Gang, including my parents, and Yang just has this uncanny ability to unite impossible sides. And so I'm like, even if you don't vote for Yang, like I would suggest that you share Joe Rogan's interview with Yang with your family, and maybe that'll catalyze something. So yeah, a lot of the principles in conflict mediation are just really useful. It's affirm people where they're at and really understand their motivations. Give up your set your own model of the world aside and really empathize with their model of the world. And a lot of times you can find, commonalities. And it was a very touching moment because, I heard when I mentioned, what happened with my family and how Yang's platform was able to unite, she paused, right? And, in that 1 or 2 seconds of silence, there was just so much emotion. Yeah.
How did the call end?
It ended, it ended at that. Me suggesting that she look into Yang, at least share Yang's video with her family, because Yang has, and I never got to follow up with her though, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's amazing how when you look, you don't get a lot of that on Twitter. Obviously, it's a different medium. Or have you found a way to kind of affirm people and listen and be able to really have that kind of connection on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, it is tougher, but I have been able to make a lot of strides where a conversation was totally stuck, and I would come in and just start affirming people. There's always a way to resolve a conflict, always. In the rule of thumb in my healing circles is the degree of anger, resentment that's present is directly proportional to a desire for a connection that was not achieved. And so when you put your attention on, okay, what's missing? What's that person actually, what's desired here that's missing? You can usually, that'll lead you closer to the answer.
Have you ever thought about what ails Trump? In a way, I feel like he's got his own demons that he's kind of dealing with.
Yeah.
Like as someone who's in the business of conflict, reconciliation or resolution or mediation, if you had to affirm him, like where is that guy coming from your perspective? What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? It's I'm sure in his mind he's doing the right thing. Yeah, I mean that's all I can say without really spending time with him in person. Yeah.
One thing I've heard other people say who are from kind of the New York real estate scene is that they never respected him, and he knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And he never felt taken seriously. That, you know, he was a guy from Queens, a little, you know, gilded everything, and he wasn't really like old money, Upper East Side kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if there's some truth to that, where he still feels the need to be adored, you know, because maybe he wasn't back home. But yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things to trace back to childhood wounds. Let's see. I would say that if I were to go and reach Trump, what I would say is he's disconnected. There's another saying in my healership circles that goes, all harm happens in disconnection. And no harm can happen in connection, and harms can be undone by reconnecting what was missing. Like, I think Trump he's disconnected from the full impact of everything that he does and says. If he were to, you know, really have a conversation with somebody who is suffering, you know, it's just that he doesn't see a lot of, he doesn't feel a lot of what other people are feeling because of what he's doing. Yeah. And I also think, you know, I want to be honest here. Like in 2016, I almost voted for Trump. And I ended up not voting for Trump because my sister, you know, I saw how much it hurt my sister if I were to have done so. So I myself am conflicted, you know, in this way too. You know, people are complex, right?
What was it about his candidacy that tempted you to throw your support behind him?
What I would describe later, it was that, you know, Trump is the kind of the absurdity we hire to precipitate wake up. I just felt like his outsiderness and his just like naivete and his I was hoping that he would shake things up and just wake people up.
Right.
Yeah. And I felt like at the time that Hillary she's more cunning, she's smarter, and she would be able to kind of keep people, you know, in a status quo. And the status quo wasn't ready. It wasn't okay with me. It was just more of being asleep.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly Hillary Clinton and the Clinton organization is sort of the epitome of the Democratic insider power structure for the last few decades. And yeah, if you wanted change, then you would not think she would not be the first name that came to mind, other than the fact that she would have been the first woman president. Aside from that, she was, you know, pretty traditional establishment candidate. How do you feel about Biden? Like, he's not exactly coming from way outside the Beltway either.
Yeah. You know, it's for these reasons that I was never a political person, even though I cared a lot. And, you know, frankly, I haven't been keeping up with what's going on because it's just so boring. It's just so demoralizing without yang.
Yeah.
You know, but I do feel like people are waking up. And so I am very optimistic about where we're at, even though there's a lot of darkness around. Yeah.
How did you deal with the campaign suspension? The reason I'm late, I had to come out of a going away dinner for another American family here in Switzerland. And, you know, we were talking about how it's a weird time for all of us expats to go back to the States because it's kind of a crazy time in America right now. And, you know, I couldn't help but be like, you know, we could have had Yang.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
we still can't have Yang.
Yeah, you know, it's
not a 0% chance.
That's true.
It's a non-0% chance.
How did you handle that? Because I was not prepared for it. I was not prepared for that freaking campaign to be. So I thought, okay, if he suspends, it'll be after Super Tuesday. But I thought we'd see it through at least that far. how did you take it?
Yeah, it ended up quite abruptly, but you know, I spent one day kind of sad about it. But then the next day, because I was still in Nevada, we were still campaigning, and at first I started to write something that I could say to other people to keep them excited, and then I started believing it myself. And it was never about Yang the person. It was always about his ideas. Right? It was about the idea of humanity first. And I love this slogan. I love this idea, and it's such an all-encompassing idea. And I was like, the following day, as I was out talking to people, I would say, it's actually a good thing that Yang suspended his campaign. Now, when we go out there and talk, we're not trying to push one particular guy. We're trying to push all of humanity to level up.